The grand building stood tall under bright lights, glowing against the dark evening sky. Cars lined up outside, one after another, each more expensive than the last. Drivers opened doors for guests dressed in fine clothes, shining shoes, and confident smiles. Laughter floated through the air as people greeted each other, talking about business, investments, and luxury travel. Inside, the hall looked like something from a dream. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, tables were covered in white cloth, and soft music played in the background. This was not a place meant for struggle or worry. It was a place for people who had everything. At the edge of the entrance, a young girl stood still for a moment before stepping forward. She was thin, her clothes clean but worn, and her shoes showed signs of long use. She held a small bag close to her chest, not because it was valuable, but because it was all she had. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in the beauty and the people who seemed so far from her world. She did not look afraid, but she did look careful, like someone used to being told they do not belong. No one noticed her at first. The crowd was too busy admiring itself. The girl walked quietly, keeping her head slightly lowered, careful not to bump into anyone. She could feel the difference between herself and everyone else, not just in clothes or money, but in the way people stood tall and spoke freely. She chose a spot near the wall, away from the tables, where she could observe without being seen too much. The smell of fine food filled the air, reminding her of meals she often missed. Her stomach tightened, but she ignored it. She was not here for food. She had come for something else, something she had not touched in a long time. Her eyes slowly moved toward the large piano placed near the center of the hall. It was polished and beautiful, reflecting the lights above. Just looking at it made her chest feel heavy. That piano brought back memories she tried not to think about too often. A small room long ago, a window that let in afternoon light, a pair of old hands guiding hers over black and white keys. Those days were gone now. Life had changed quickly, in ways she never chose. Still, the sound of a piano had stayed with her, living quietly inside her, waiting. As guests continued to arrive, whispers began to form. A few people noticed the girl standing alone. Some assumed she was staff. Others thought she might be lost. One woman looked her up and down and frowned, clearly confused by her presence. A man nearby shook his head slightly, as if the sight annoyed him. The girl pretended not to notice. She had learned how to disappear in plain sight. A server passed by carrying a tray of drinks. For a moment, the girl wondered if she should leave before someone asked questions. But her feet did not move. She felt pulled to stay, like leaving would mean losing something important forever. She took a slow breath and stayed where she was, across the hall. The host of the evening spoke with a group of guests. He was known for his success and wealth, and many admired him. His voice carried easily, full of confidence. He laughed often, comfortable in this world he ruled. This event was meant to celebrate generosity, yet it was clear that power and status still filled the room. Soft music began to play louder as the evening officially started. A well-dressed performer sat at the piano and began to play something light and pleasant. Guests smiled, nodded, and continued their conversations. The music became background noise, polite and expected. The girl listened closely. Her fingers twitched slightly at her side, remembering movements she had not made in years. She closed her eyes for a brief moment. In her mind, she was not standing against a wall anymore. She was sitting on a bench, her feet barely touching the floor, trying again and again to get a piece right. Mistakes, corrections, patience. That was how she learned. Not fast, not easy, but honest. When she opened her eyes, reality returned. The polished floor, the expensive dresses, the feeling of being invisible. Still, something inside her felt steady. She did not come here by accident. She had walked a long way to reach this place. Every step had been guided by one quiet hope. A guard near the entrance finally noticed her. He watched her for a moment, then walked closer. His expression was not angry, just questioning. He asked her softly what she was doing there. The girl answered politely, explaining that she only wanted to listen to the music. She spoke calmly, not begging, not demanding. The guard hesitated. She did not look like trouble. After a short pause, he nodded and stepped away, though his eyes returned to her more than once. Relief washed over her, but it did not make her relax. She stayed still, knowing any wrong move could change everything. Around her, laughter grew louder as drinks flowed freely. Conversations turned careless. Someone nearby joked about the cost of the piano, saying it was worth more than some houses. The girl looked at the instrument again. her heart tightening. To her, it was priceless for a different reason. She wondered what her life might have been like if things had gone differently. If she had stayed in school. If she had kept playing. If loss had not come so early. But she pushed those thoughts away. Tonight was not about regret. It was about being present. As the first performance ended, polite applause filled the room. Another performer prepared to take the seat. The girl shifted her weight slightly, her hands clasped together. She knew she could not stay silent forever. If she left without trying, she would carry that regret longer than any hunger or cold. People passed by her, some brushing close without apology. She remained patient. She watched, listened, and waited. The piano waited too, silent for a brief moment between players. In that pause, something settled inside her. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She did not know how the night would end. She did not know if she would be laughed at or thrown out. But she knew one thing clearly. She had come to this place because music had once saved her, and she believed it could speak for her again. As the lights reflected off the piano's surface, the girl took one small step forward, not yet toward the instrument, but toward the choice she knew she would soon have to make. The night was only beginning, and no one in that room yet understood how close they were to being changed by someone they almost never noticed. The girl remained near the wall as the night moved forward. More guests filled the room, and the sound of voices grew louder. Laughter echoed off the high ceiling, mixing with the soft clinking of glasses. People spoke easily, as if the world had never asked anything hard of them. She listened without trying to join in, her attention moving between faces, gestures, and the piano that seemed to pull her thoughts back again and again. She noticed how people looked at each other here. Many smiles were quick and practiced. Handshakes were firm, eyes sharp. Conversations felt like quiet contests, each person trying to appear more important than the last. The girl had seen this kind of behavior before, though never in a place so grand. She understood it came from fear too, just hidden better. A pair of guests passed close to her, speaking without lowering their voices. One of them glanced at the girl and raised an eyebrow. The other followed the look and let out a small laugh. They did not say anything directly, but the meaning was clear. The girl felt the familiar sting of judgment. She shifted her feet but stayed where she was. She had learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. Nearby, a group of women admired each other's outfits, comparing fabric and cost. One of them noticed the girl standing alone and whispered something behind her hand. The others glanced over briefly, then turned away. The girl stared at the floor, pretending to study the pattern of the tiles. Her face remained calm, but inside, old memories stirred. Moments when she had been told she was out of place. Moments when silence was the only shield she had. The music continued, piece after piece, each performance polished and careful. Applause followed every song, respectful but distant. The girl listened closely, noticing things others did not. Small mistakes, missed emotion, playing that sounded correct but empty. She did not judge the performers harshly. She knew how hard music could be. Still, she felt something missing, something she could not explain but felt deeply. She wondered if anyone here truly listened, or if they only heard what they expected. Music, to her, had never been background noise. It had been a place to hide, a way to breathe when everything else felt too heavy. Standing in that room, surrounded by wealth and comfort, she felt the distance between her experience and theirs more clearly than ever. A server walked past her again, this time slowing down. He offered her a small plate, assuming she might be staff who had not yet eaten. The girl hesitated, then shook her head gently. She thanked him quietly. The server looked surprised but smiled and moved on. The smell of food lingered, and she swallowed hard, reminding herself why she was here. Across the room, the host turned his attention toward the stage area. He watched the performances with polite interest, clapping when expected. He noticed the girl then, standing so still among moving people. At first, he assumed she belonged to the staff. Then he noticed her eyes. They were fixed on the piano, not wandering like those of someone bored or lost. Something about that caught his attention, though he said nothing yet. The girl felt his gaze without looking up. She had felt it before in other places, a mix of curiosity and doubt. She straightened slightly, not out of pride, but out of habit. She had learned to carry herself carefully when eyes were on her. Another performance ended, and guests used the pause to refill drinks and stretch their legs. Conversations grew louder, less controlled. Someone near the piano joked loudly about how easy it must be to play, when lessons cost more than most people earn in a year. A few laughed. The girl's hands tightened together. She knew how untrue that was. Talent did not come from money alone. It came from time, effort, and pain. She thought again about leaving. The idea tugged at her, tempting her with safety. No one would stop her. She could walk out quietly, and no one would remember she had been there. But the thought made her chest ache. She had already been forgotten by too many people in her life. She took a slow breath and focused on the piano. The bench sat empty now, waiting for the next performer. The lights reflected off the smooth surface, almost blinding. She imagined sitting there, feeling the keys beneath her fingers again. The thought both frightened and comforted her. A man standing nearby spoke loudly about opportunity, about how success came to those who took risks. The girl almost smiled at the words. She wondered if he had ever risked being laughed at, or pushed away, or told he did not belong. Real risk, she knew, felt very different. Time passed slowly. The girl's legs grew tired, but she did not move. Each moment felt like part of a test she had not agreed to take, but could not leave unfinished. She watched the people, the performers, the host. She waited for the right moment, though she did not know what it would look like. The host finally stepped away from his group and walked toward the stage. He spoke briefly into a microphone, thanking the performers and the guests for their support. His voice was smooth, practiced. He spoke about generosity, about giving chances, about believing in potential. The words floated through the room, beautiful and easy to applaud. As the guests clapped, the girl felt something shift inside her. The words echoed too closely to her own thoughts. Giving chances, believing in potential. She wondered if those ideas only applied to people who already looked the part. The applause faded, and the piano stood silent again. For a brief moment, no one moved. The girl felt her heart begin to beat faster. She knew this pause would not last long. Another performer would step forward soon, and the night would continue without her. Before she could overthink it, she took a small step away from the wall. Her movement was subtle, but it felt huge to her. A few people noticed and turned to look. She stopped, her courage shaking, but she did not step back. She reminded herself that she was not asking for pity. She was not asking for money. She was asking for a moment. Just one moment to let the only thing she truly knew speak for her. As murmurs rose again and someone approached the piano from the side, the girl stood quietly, gathering her strength. Her hands were steady now. Fear was still there, but it no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a door. The room carried on, unaware that something fragile and powerful was about to challenge its comfort. The girl waited, her eyes fixed forward, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that once she spoke or stepped forward, there would be no turning back. The pause around the piano did not last long. A well-dressed performer stepped forward, ready to take the bench again. The girl watched closely, feeling the moment slipping away. Her heart beat faster, louder in her ears than the voices around her. She knew if she waited any longer, she would lose the courage she had built piece by piece throughout the night. Before she could think herself out of it, she moved, not quickly, not with drama, but with a calm determination that surprised even her. She took a few careful steps toward the piano. The movement caught attention. A few guests turned, their conversation slowing as they noticed someone unfamiliar approaching the center of the room. The performer paused, confused. The girl stopped a short distance from the bench and spoke softly. Her voice was steady, though it carried a quiet shake beneath it. She asked if she could play just one piece, just one. The room grew still, as if unsure how to respond. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Some people frowned, others smiled in disbelief. A few let out short laughs, not meant to be cruel, but careless all the same. The girl stood straight, her hands resting calmly at her sides. She did not apologize for being there. She simply waited. The host noticed the shift in the room and turned fully toward the piano. He studied the girl for a moment. Her clothes were plain, her posture respectful, her expression serious. This was not someone looking for attention or trouble. Still, doubt crossed his face. This was his event, his reputation, his carefully planned evening. He stepped closer and asked her why she wanted to play. His tone was controlled, polite, but firm. The girl met his eyes and answered honestly. She said she had played before. She said music was important to her. She said she would not take much time. The simplicity of her words surprised some people. There was no dramatic story, no plea for sympathy, just truth. The host hesitated. He glanced at the crowd, aware of their expectations. He did not want a scene, but something about the girl's calm refusal to beg made him pause. Someone nearby whispered that it would be embarrassing. Someone else said it might be amusing. A few guests leaned forward, curious now. The host made a decision. He nodded slowly and said she could play something short, something simple. His voice carried a hint of caution, as if setting a boundary he hoped would protect everyone. The girl thanked him quietly. She did not smile. She did not rush. She walked to the bench with careful steps and sat down. The piano felt familiar beneath her hands, like greeting an old friend after a long separation. For a moment, she simply rested her fingers on the keys, letting herself breathe. The room was silent now, heavy with expectation. Some guests crossed their arms. Others prepared polite smiles, ready for a quick clap before returning to their conversations. Few believed anything meaningful was about to happen. The girl closed her eyes. When she pressed the first key, the sound was soft but clear. It was not flashy or loud. It was careful, thoughtful. A few people shifted, surprised by the control in her touch. She continued, letting the notes flow slowly, building something gentle and honest. As the melody grew, the room began to change. Conversation stopped completely. Glasses were lowered. People who had planned to ignore the performance found themselves listening without meaning to. The music carried a feeling that could not be explained easily. It was not perfect in a technical way, but it was real. The girl played as if the room no longer existed. She was not thinking about judgment or wealth or difference. She was thinking about long nights when music was her only comfort. She was thinking about loss, about hope, about the quiet strength it took to keep going when no one noticed. Her hands moved with confidence shaped by hardship. Every note carried weight. Some guests felt their throats tighten. Others felt memories rise unexpectedly. The piano filled the space with something deeper than entertainment. The host stood still, his earlier doubt fading. He watched her closely now, seeing not a needy girl, but a musician who understood something many people never learned. He felt the room slipping out of his control, not in a dangerous way, but in a humbling one. The music grew stronger, then softer again, like breathing. The girl's face remained calm, but her body leaned into the sound, fully present. This was not a performance meant to impress. It was a release. A few guests exchanged glances, surprised by their own reactions. Someone wiped at their eye and looked away, embarrassed by the emotion. Others leaned forward, afraid to miss a single note. No one laughed now. No one whispered. When the final notes came, they lingered in the air longer than expected. The girl lifted her hands slowly from the keys. She remained still, eyes still, closed, as if afraid the moment would disappear too quickly. For several seconds, no one spoke. The silence was deep and full, not awkward. It was the kind of silence that follows something meaningful. Then someone began to clap. One pair of hands, then another. Soon the sound filled the room, louder than any applause earlier that night. The girl opened her eyes. She looked out at the crowd, unsure how to react. She stood slowly, her legs slightly unsteady, and stepped away from the bench. The applause continued. Some guests stood, others remained seated but clapped with genuine respect. The host approached her again, this time with a different expression. His voice was softer now. He thanked her. He asked where she had learned to play. The girl answered simply, explaining that she had learned long ago and kept practicing when she could. The crowd listened closely. They no longer saw her as an interruption. They saw her as someone who had given them something unexpected. As the applause slowly faded, the girl stood quietly, unsure of what would come next. She had done what she came to do. Whatever happened now was out of her hands. But inside, she felt lighter. No matter what followed, she knew she had been heard. The applause slowly settled, but the feeling in the room did not fade. People remained standing longer than they normally would. Some looked at each other as if waking from a deep thought. Others avoided eye contact, unsure how to return to light conversation after something so real. The girl stood near the piano, her hands folded in front of her, breathing quietly. She did not know where to look, so she kept her eyes low. The host spoke again, thanking everyone for their patience and kindness. His voice sounded different now, less polished, more sincere. He invited the guests to enjoy the rest of the evening, but many stayed focused on the girl instead of returning to their drinks. A few people clapped again, softer this time, as if afraid the moment might slip away if they were too loud. The performer who had been waiting stepped back, giving space. No one rushed the piano. It felt as though the instrument itself needed time to rest. The girl took a small step away from it, unsure if she should leave or stay. Her heart still raced, but not with fear anymore. It felt full, almost aching. Several guests approached her carefully, not all at once. One by one, a woman told her the music reminded her of home. A man nodded and said he had not expected that tonight. Their words were simple, but they felt heavy with meaning. The girl thanked them quietly. She was not used to being spoken to like this, with respect instead of doubt. Others watched from a distance. Some still looked uncomfortable. They were not ready to face what the music had stirred in them. The girl noticed but did not judge. She understood how hard it could be to feel something unexpected. The host returned to her side and asked if she would sit with him for a moment. He led her toward a quieter corner of the hall. The noise softened there, replaced by low conversation and the distant sound of glasses. He offered her a seat and waited until she was settled before speaking. He asked her about her life, not in a public way, not for show, just between them. The girl hesitated, then spoke carefully. She did not share everything, only what felt safe. She talked about learning music when she was younger, about how life changed, about how she kept playing in her mind even when she no longer had a piano. The host listened without interrupting. He did not check his phone. He did not glance around to see who was watching. He simply listened. When she finished, he nodded slowly. He said her music had reminded him why he first loved it. Before success and schedules made everything feel rushed, food was brought over, offered gently this time, without assumption. The girl accepted a small plate. She ate slowly, aware of eyes on her, but less bothered now. For once, she did not feel like she had to hide. Across the room, conversations had changed. People spoke more softly. Some shared memories they had not talked about in years. The music had opened doors they did not know were still closed. A few guests returned to their usual tone, laughing and joking, but even they seemed slightly quieter. A photographer raised a camera, then lowered it again. The moment did not feel like something that should be captured. It felt like something that should be remembered. The girl finished eating and thanked the server. She stood, unsure what was expected of her now. The host asked if she would like to play again later, if she felt comfortable. She smiled slightly and said maybe. It was the first time she had smiled that night. She walked back toward the wall where she had first stood, but it did not feel the same anymore. The space no longer swallowed her. People noticed her now, not because she did not belong, but because she had given something that could not be ignored. She looked at the piano again, not with longing this time, but with quiet gratitude. Whatever happened next, she knew this moment would stay with her. As the evening continued, guests came and went. Some stopped to speak with her. Some simply nodded. A few apologized without saying the word. She accepted it all calmly. She had already received what mattered most. The host returned once more before the night ended. He told her she was welcome anytime. He said opportunities could be found when people were willing to listen. The girl thanked him, understanding the weight behind his words, but also knowing that nothing was guaranteed. When the event began to wind down, she moved toward the exit. The lights seemed softer now. The room felt warmer. She stepped outside into the cool night air and took a deep breath. The city sounds greeted her again, familiar and grounding. Cars passed. Voices echoed from the street. Life continued as it always did, but she felt changed, even if nothing around her had shifted yet. She walked away from the building slowly, the music still alive inside her. She did not know where she would sleep that night. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she was no longer invisible. The night had given her something she had almost forgotten she deserved: to be heard, to be seen, and to believe, even just a little, that her future might hold more than survival. The morning came quietly. The city woke the way it always did, with buses starting their routes and shop doors lifting halfway. The girl sat on a bench near a small park, the cool air brushing her face. She had slept little, not because of noise or fear, but because her mind would not slow down. The night before kept replaying in her thoughts, not as a dream, but as something solid and real. She half expected the feeling to fade with daylight, the way hope often did, but it did not. The memory of the piano, the silence that followed her final note, and the sound of honest applause stayed with her. It made her sit a little straighter. It made the world feel slightly less heavy. As the day moved on, she went through her usual routine. Nothing around her had changed yet. Streets looked the same. People passed by without noticing her. Life did not suddenly become easier. Still, something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like she was carrying her past alone. Later that afternoon, she returned to the building where the gala had been held, not to go inside, but to stand across the street and look at it again. In daylight, it seemed less magical, more like any other large building. She smiled to herself. The power of the night had not come from the walls or the lights. It had come from being allowed to speak in the only language she truly knew. She did not know if anyone would remember her beyond a passing thought. She did not expect promises to magically turn into answers. What she did know was that she had proven something to herself. She had not imagined her ability. She had not exaggerated her worth. As she turned to leave, a familiar voice called out. The host from the night before stood near the entrance, dressed more simply now. He looked surprised but pleased to see her. He asked if she had a moment. She nodded. They walked together for a short distance, not as host and guest, but as two people sharing a conversation. He told her he had thought about her music all night. He said it stayed with him longer than any speech or donation. He asked what she wanted to do next, not what she needed, but what she wanted. The question caught her off guard. She thought for a moment before answering honestly. She said she wanted to play again, to learn more, to grow. She said she did not expect comfort, only a chance. He nodded slowly. He said chances mattered most when they were given at the right time. He explained that he could not promise an easy path, but he could offer guidance and access to things she had been shut out from before. A place to practice. People who could listen. Opportunities that depended on effort, not appearance. The girl listened carefully. She did not rush to agree. She had learned to be cautious with hope, but she also knew when to step forward. She thanked him and accepted, not with excitement, but with quiet resolve. The days that followed were not simple. She practiced on old pianos with stiff keys. She listened more than she spoke. She worked harder than anyone expected. Some people doubted her again. Some tested her patience. But she did not break. She had already faced worse. Slowly, people began to notice her consistency, her discipline, the way she played as if every note mattered. She was not trying to impress anymore. She was building something real. There were nights when she felt tired and unsure, nights when the future still felt fragile. But even then, she remembered the silence after her performance, the way the room had listened. That memory carried her forward. Months passed. Life did not turn perfect, but it became fuller. She played in small spaces. She taught herself pieces she once thought were beyond her. She learned from mistakes instead of fearing them. One evening, she sat alone at a piano in a quiet room. The window opened to the sound of the city. She played without an audience, without pressure, just for herself. The music flowed easily now, shaped by everything she had lived through. She paused and smiled, not because she had arrived somewhere, but because she was moving forward. The world would not always be kind. She knew that, but she also knew this. Her voice mattered, her story mattered, and no matter where life led her next, she would never again believe she was invisible. What began as one brave step into a place where she did not belong had become the moment. She claimed her place in the world, not through wealth, not through permission, but through the courage to be heard when silence felt safer.